as an introduction, for people to know who you are. So you've been a holistic psychotherapist for, I think it was 25 years, you said, right?
Since 1989, I have been practicing, but I have had my master's since 1995. So 25 years plus, because I was practicing before that, but not with my master's.
Yeah. And I find it just about that. I find it really interesting because as we were talking before, the term holistic put with psychotherapy is something it's fairly recent, and the fact that you've been doing that for so long, that in itself says a lot, because you already had that interest, like you were a precursor. How do you say that? Oh God, it's a French word that I'm trying to put in English right there. When you're opening a path, like when you're one of the first ones to do something.
Yes. And I don't know the word either, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, and so when we were talking, you highlighted that the path that you had and the life that you had led you to a lot of or to encounter a lot of obstacles or more difficult moments, and it brought you where you are right now. And I just found it so inspiring because of the courage that you showed, and the way I told you already, the way I felt your courage. There is so much dignity in it, and there's so much humbleness in the way you express it, and in the way you show us that it's important to face it. It's important to face what's put on what's being put on your path in order to achieve your dreams. So yeah, so
Yes.
that's what I wanted us to talk about. Yeah.
Well, I have always seen every struggle as an opportunity to grow and to heal. I had a very traumatic childhood. My father had a drug problem. My parents divorced. I had an abuse history. My parents were very, what's the word? They were not really emotionally tuned in. So ever since I could remember, so basically throughout my childhood, I disconnected from myself, because that's what kids do when they have trauma. That's what people do. They disconnect from themselves. So I have always, though, seen my childhood as happening so that I could do what I do. So that I always saw it that's the reason that I became a psychotherapist. I wanted to help people and be able to hold the space for people through my own struggles. It helped me to hold the space for people to share about their own. And I just knew ever since could remember, I just knew my childhood unfolded the way it did and things happened the way they did because I was meant to hold the space for people that really struggled through things. And when I first started practicing, I will tell you, it was like a multi-pinball machine. I had so many triggers from hearing so many people's stories that I would come home so anxious, so depressed. I would get under the covers and I would just want to sleep. And I was so grateful that I did not have children, because how on earth could I ever even take care of them? I was a mess. And I knew that many people in my profession either worked on the surface or would quit, because it is so hard to sit and hold the space But what I learned is that each time something tapped in, something triggered me to feel anxious or depressed, what was happening was I was getting in touch with a part of myself that was wounded from my childhood that had been lost, that I needed to reconnect to. So not only was I holding the space for each person that came to see me, but they were each helping me to reconnect back to myself. So it was a mutual give and take, a mutual connection of helping each other get back to our essence and the parts of self that we've lost along the way. And I have lived by that in every aspect of my life, whether it's triggers that things that happen at work, things that happen with my husband, my children, my friends, my health. I look at every struggle as an opportunity to say, okay, what's happening here? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Why is my reaction so intense? How is this familiar? What am I supposed to learn? How am I supposed to grow? And that's how I look at everything. And it's helped me to continue to take steps forward in my life and get more connected and grounded and centered and peaceful and happy, and just to live in joy. Life gets better every single day as I take steps.
Oh, it's truly, truly beautiful and inspiring what you're saying, because we all have our egos, don't we? And it's so easy to when we feel wounded or when we feel triggered, it's so easy to put it back on the other person, and to skip that very important part that is looking at ourselves. And that's what I know a lot of people do it, but the way you express it is really clear, and it helps us understand the actual process that happens when we do that. And it when you do it that way, you actually see everything as you said, an opportunity. It's a beautiful gift that's given to us in order to heal, and in order to lift the burden and to walk life a lot lighter.
Exactly. And I think that most people, no matter what, none of us get through childhood unscathed. Many people say, well, I didn't have a bad childhood. Whether you had a great childhood or a horrible childhood, again, no one gets through childhood unscathed. It's impossible for any parent to provide 100% security. And life happens, whether it's a parent might feel depressed or anxious, a parent might have to go to work, another sibling could be born, and that is a massive threat to a child's sense of security. There could be illness, there could be death. I love sharing this little story about when a sibling is born. And because people are like, oh, that's traumatic. And it's extremely traumatic. As I say, imagine your spouse comes home and says, Marie, this is my new wife, and she's going to live with us. But I love you just as much as I always have, but I'm going to sleep with her on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm going to just spend a lot more time with her because she's new around here and she doesn't really understand everything that's going on. You'd look at him and be like, are you crazy? Like, you'd either want to kill him, you'd want to kill her, you'd want to hightail it out of there, or tell him to pack his bags and get out. That is how a child feels when their sibling is born. It is so traumatic. And when these events happen that threaten our sense of security, a child will adapt in various ways to manage that. And they could act out, they could become a pleaser, they could try and be so good to get your love back, because children are egocentric and think everything is about them, and they internalize everything that happened. Their rational brain isn't like, oh, there's a new baby, mom doesn't have as much time for me. It's like, oh no, what am I going to do? And why is this happening to me? And why isn't my mom paying attention to me? They don't understand. So we take that template and carry it everywhere we go. So whether you have, again, a great childhood or a not so great childhood, all of us end up feeling a lack of security, and all of us end up disconnecting from ourselves to some degree. And that influences how we take in everything that we experience, everything we think, everything we feel, everything we do. So it's fascinating. Another little story I have, when my mom she used to watch my kids one day a week. And every week, my husband would come home around 5 and I would get home around 7. Well, I'm going to backtrack for a minute. When my mother was 15, her mom died. Okay. And I think my mom had a hard time connecting because she had lost her mom. And her father was her sense of stability. Her father meant everything to her, and it was her sense of stability. And like I said, her mom died when she was 15. So she would watch my kids once a week. And my husband would come home from work at 5, and I would come home from work at 7. Guess what time my mom would leave every week? Any educated guess?
Mm-hmm.
I would see my mom pulling out of my driveway at 7 o'clock. Bye! As I'm pulling in. My mom would leave before I got home, or as I was coming home, every single week. And it was so interesting to me. I'd get so upset and feel so hurt. But then as I thought about it, in her mind, she was projecting her father onto my husband, who was stable and there. So she stayed with him. Her mom is the one who left her when she needed her the most. And so she'd leave and never be home for me, because she was projecting her mom. I was her, like I became her.
Mm-hmm.
And she was her mother leaving me. And it was just so fascinating. And, like you talked about blaming other people and not looking at your stuff. It's important to not only look at your stuff, but seek to understand someone else's. And I was able to say, Mom, I noticed that this is happening. And she's like, oh my God, Sherry, I never even thought about that. But you're so right. That is exactly what's happening. I'm with your husband, who's like my dad, and I'm leaving you just like my mom left me. And ever since then, she would wait, and we'd have time together when I come home from work.
Wow, it's so beautiful. And, human interactions are absolutely fascinating and so multi-layers.
Yes.
And we just tend to forget about that because we go on to our daily lives and we just we navigate with, as you said, all of the you call them templates, but all that of those templates and all of those ways that we were taught or that we learned to cope with, and those are all lenses that we have on top of the other, and everyone carries their own lenses, and we're trying to make all of that work together. It becomes, when someone's being triggered, it becomes quite complicated, because to um in French we say démêler, to untangle what's yours, what's mine, what's the ego, what's really happening, what's your perception of it, what's my perception, it's like all of that mixed up. And when that happens and you're being triggered, you can't see clearly because you have all of your emotions coming up. So it's so, and I come back to that, it is so amazing the way that you found to go through your life and to every time sit down and take the moment to step back and actually witness what was happening, because a lot of us just drown literally into that when it happens.
Exactly. And it is easy to do that, but if you take the time and take the steps, it is so rewarding. And I, my mom is one of my best friends today. And like I said, we had a very difficult childhood, and we weren't close, but from peeling back all the layers through the years and her being open to hear me and to listen and for me to share, we've been able to heal. I've been able to heal and get to a better place.
Yeah.
Which is good. And every time she left, it was like I felt it was me being abandoned. That little child was triggered in me every time she was leaving to my house at 7 when I was pulling into the driveway. It brought up that little girl in me who didn't feel secure and taken care of. So I was able to work with that and then go to her in a loving way, in an empathetic way, without screaming, so that she could hear me. Because a lot of times we go with that heightened energy, and then, like you said, it gets complicated. Then the other person can't hear you because they're triggered. But if you approach someone with love and compassion and empathy and understanding, it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, to take the time to let things settle a little bit before actually speaking up is a very wise.
Yes, I've made the mistake many a times. I've learned.
Well, that's also how we learn, isn't it? It's like you have the image of the kid who puts his hand on the top of the stove. Well, he'll do it once or twice, and then he'll learn. So it's another way of learning.
It take me 100 times. I eventually get it. I tell my clients, they're like, why do we go over the same thing again and again? And I'm like, believe me, you're going to get it. Eventually it all clicks. And then it's like, oh, I used to have that problem. Because when you heal at the root of the problem, it's amazing. You don't even have to really think about it. You're just operating differently and relating differently. You don't even have to try.